All right. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Noobie Photographer Podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Hollery, and it is good to have you here today. I've already actually done another podcast episode today with my other podcast, the Boca Podcast, and it was gloomy and cloudy outside. It is brightened up, sunny skies. I'm pretty excited about this. We got a good energy flowing, and I'm going to introduce our brand new guest here in just a second. This podcast is dedicated to new photographers, hence the name. And we're actually starting the podcast out with a series called I Wish I Knew. And so for those of you photographers, you're just starting your business, first 3 years of business or so, and you're trying to figure out how to get that business off the ground or get it to a place where it's actually generating income for you, you need to book more clients, this is the place for you to be. And we're going to distill the most important concepts and principles behind running a photography business into 15, 20-minute episodes. And we're starting with the series called I Wish I Knew, where established photographers come on the show and they share a big idea, a principle that they wish they knew more about when they first started their photography business. And so to that end, I've got a brand new guest on the podcast today. And there we go. We got it. Pushing all the right buttons. Hollery Morris is here with me. Hollery, thank you so much for making time to come on the show, share a little bit with our photographers today.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Hollery Morris, and I shoot specifically maternity and underwater maternity. So that is about me. I started around 2017, and ever since then, it's been full speed ahead.
Full speed ahead, which is pretty great, actually. And I'm going to pop up your website here while we're talking about your brand, because like this is super, super stunning work. In fact, I haven't even had the opportunity to look through this as much as I'd like to. I mean, it's just really, really gorgeous. First of all, not a lot of photographers offer underwater photography, which is just, I mean, I'm looking at this black and white photo here that is absolutely stunning. In fact, let's just dig in a little bit more. We've got a couple of minutes. Like, what even got you into this genre to begin with? Because it's so unusual. I know that there are a few photographers here and there that do it, but it's a lot of work to do something like this that's so unique.
So I didn't know how to swim. So I did not know how to swim. I saw some work of Jennifer Martin. I think her name is Jenny Martin. Yeah. And I loved her work. And I was just like, I can't do this because I don't know how to swim. So I thought about it. And I ended up going to work with, oh my gosh, I can't even think of her name right now. Significant Moments, Karen Bagley. And she ended up knowing Jenny. And I was like, you know what, this is a sign, because I had just watched her TED Talk. And I said, you know what, well, let me just sign up for this underwater workshop. And when I signed up for it, I didn't know how to swim. I took swimming lessons like 3 weeks before the session.
No way. Okay.
Yes. So, and I fell in love with it. That's like my first love.
Okay. So first of all, I'm a little tongue in cheek here, but you literally jumped into deep end, both with not having known how to swim, nor how to approach this craft with this style of photography. And you just did it all at once, which is really, really impressive. That's really cool. Now, how long ago was that?
Ooh, that had to be 2019.
Okay.
I think it's 2019. Yeah.
So about 3 years ago. Wow. That's really cool. So I know there's a lot of things that we could talk about today, but what is one of the biggest ideas, principles behind running a photography business you wish you had known a little bit more about when you first got started?
So for me, I would think I would say money or things like that, but no, mine was, I was depending on family and friends to get the word out there. And that puts a lot of pressure on people. The more I got better with my craft and practicing more, I realized that I couldn't, not say depend on them, but pressure them to shoot with me just because, oh, I'm family, you're supposed to support me. But that comes with growth over the years. Like, I don't expect things like that anymore, but that's the number one thing. Like, yes, you want their support, but you can't heavily rely on theirs and have an expectation of your family to do something.
That makes sense. And we're going to kind of break this down really practically for everybody listening and watching here in just a second, how you've applied it to your business. But I know, I mean, it's even something that I've said in the past to other photographers. As you're getting started, it's easy to talk about or to suggest to a photographer, hey, in order to get started, reach out to a family or reach out to friends, put it out there on Facebook and ask for the opportunity to photograph them, to build your portfolio. You might use them as a point of reference to maybe another family or a friend of a friend that you have the opportunity to photograph and maybe book your first paid session. there is a tendency to go that direction, but there are also some drawbacks. And I think we're going to kind of talk a little bit about those here in just a second. At what point, I mean, you've been in business for about 3 years or so now. At what point along that 3 years did you realize, ooh, I need to pull back a little bit and stop relying on them so much?
I would have to say, I would see, little posts on, what was it, on Facebook, and they're like, oh, your family's supposed to support you. It wouldn't be worded like that. And I just kept seeing those, and I just feel like it's unfair. And I feel like it's selfish to actually expect your family. Now, it's great. I love when they share my work.
Yeah.
I support that. I tell them I'm thankful, but I think it's selfish, mainly because they may not, I don't care if, well, I don't want to say I don't care, but it doesn't bother me if they don't like my style of shooting. I shoot with flash. Some people like, they may like the dark and moody or the light and airy. Yeah. And at first, when I first started, I did not understand that. I thought that they were specifically supposed to go with me because I'm family. You're supposed to support me. Right. And that's not fair. But like I said, as you grow and learn, you kind of mature in that area. Yeah.
Well, and we're going to actually talk about how you've applied that then to your business on a really practical level. And for everybody listening, and by the way, I've been popping this up on screen. I'll do it one more time here. Hollery's website, Hollery, Hollery, Morris.com, Morris, and then Hollery Morris Photos on Instagram. Make sure you check out Hollery's work because it's absolutely stunning, Hollery. And
Thank you.
You don't get enough props. I mean, it's really, truly beautiful stuff. And maybe we can do a separate episode sometime and really get into that craft. I think on my Boca podcast, I've only had one or two other photographers on that offer that particular service. It's so highly unusual. But we'll save that for another day. We only have a few minutes here.
Okay.
And before I ask you this question, will you do me a favor and just adjust that just a little bit? It's brushing up against your shirt. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. I just want to make. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We're good to go. So let's talk about kind of practical application. You made this realization. You're like, to your point, it's not fair for me to continue to rely on family. You realize you need to make a change. What did that look like on a very practical level? And I know you told me you've got 3 kind of big ideas to share here. How did you apply that to your business?
So for one, like I said earlier, I don't pressure them to shoot with me. I think their support alone, just telling people about me, word of mouth, sharing my work on social media is enough for me. And I'm thankful for that. I was not always in that place. Okay. I expected everything to be about me, but that's one of the things. If they
when you say shoot with you, do you mean to be subjects or models, or what do you mean?
Well, when I say shoot with me, I mean, if I see them and they're like, I would see family members. I'm like, hey, does anyone know any photographers out there? And I'm like, hi, but I'm just starting. And when you're just starting, you're like, oh, look at my work. Boom, boom, boom. But you're seeing your worth as, it could be your best work, but to yourself, but to others, they have to see more consistency. Like, let me see if she's really doing this, because I would change my mind. Like, I may be an artist next year. Not saying I love photography, but like, I may, they wanted to see, like, is she really going to stick with this? Okay. So this is surprising to them too.
But they may also have different taste and style then, I guess, too. Yes. And you kind of alluded to that a few minutes ago, but that's funny because I think I took it personally too, when family members, like years ago when I was actively shooting, there was there was this tendency to expect them, if they wanted photography, to reach out to me, and then they don't. You're kind of like, but we're right here. Like you could have used us. We'll photograph your portrait session or your family session. Yes. So I know what you mean, but it could be that the style that we offer as a photographer doesn't necessarily fit what they're looking for.
Yes. And like I said, that's something I have to grow with because I shoot with flash, and that puts a completely different look and style. And that may not match as I grow and learn and start selling my work, that may not match the, what will I say? Not the vibe in their house. What's the word? Not the style. Just say if you put something in my house, like the aesthetic. Yes. So for me, my house, it may be canvases. Your house may be an acrylic print. So it just depends on what, the client, what my family actually likes. And I just think a lot of it comes with growth. You have to realize that your family has choices and friends, and they can shoot with you if they want to or not. But like, you just have to get to a space in your life where you become secure within who you are. And regardless as if they shoot with you or not, you're good, you're trying, and you're not trying to prove yourself to anyone to shoot with you.
That totally makes sense. Okay. So number one, then, don't expect your family to use you as the photographer all the time.
Yep.
Simple as that. Okay, cool. Take us to the second point.
The other one is like when my family share my work, that's good enough for me too. Them sharing my work, them referring people to me. That's one of the things too. I'm always thankful for that. I do love their support. Like, I know I said that earlier, but this is also, it's number two too. If they choose a photograph with me, I'm grateful. But if they don't, sometimes it's financial. They may not be able to afford, not saying you can't afford me, but they may not be able to afford that yet.
Okay.
And there's other things going on in people's lives besides photography. So people may not need any photos either, because photography is also a luxury. So they may not need it.
So number one, don't expect them to hire you as a photographer. Number two, don't necessarily expect them to refer you to others. It may not, it's not personal. We're expecting them to do all this for us, but you make a really great point about all of this. Really, we don't need to take it personally. It's not a personal matter. Okay, then take us to the third point.
And the other one is, they may not even be, not saying your audience, but they may not even be your market. So say, for example, if say my cousin or someone, they're doing a newborn session. When I first started, I was doing everything because I'm trying to make money. But now, since I'm more specific about what I shoot, I would refer them to somebody else. And I'm not going to expect her, say she wants a newborn photographer. I'm not going to say, well, you can just go with me because I can shoot it. Just because I'm shooting, I'll refer her to someone else. So I may not be, they're not saying they're not necessarily my audience, but in that moment, they may not need me. And even if I shoot maternity, they may still want to shoot with someone else, because everyone has their favorites and you have to respect that. So I have 3 friends. I may shoot between them, but I may shoot with one of my friends with something and the other one, and I may not even shoot with that group and go not above them, but go to someone else. They're not upset with me because I went with someone else. They just know, oh, Hollery's been really admiring this person. She went with them, and it's no big deal.
Interesting. Okay, so number one, don't expect them to hire you as a photographer. Number two, don't expect them to refer you necessarily. It's like you said, it's always wonderful when they do. You're certainly appreciative of it. Can't expect that. And then number three, don't expect them to be your target market. And I think this is important on multiple levels. We could probably actually spend quite a bit of time just on this topic, but make sure that there is a distinction. And part of that, I'm wondering if you could maybe comment on this, Hollery, is being clear about who it is as a photographer that you or any other photographer is trying to attract. Who is your target client? Because if we're not clear about that, it's easy to confuse the conversation and get annoyed that our families, aren't somehow serving our business. But if we're trying to reach to somebody who is not our family, it's a lot easier to make the distinction at that point. Would you say?
Yes. And I have niched down to maternity. But then I always find myself, like, I'd still do motherhood, but I'll find myself doing other things too. And I may post it and I may not, which I probably shouldn't post so many things, but I love it. Sure. But you just have to make sure that you're clear and concise with your audience. So they even know, like, oh, let me just go to find a maternity photographer. But that also goes into SEO, which is a whole nother, subject and everything. Yeah. But yes.
No, I actually think it's great that you don't post everything, because there's specificity to the brand again. Right? If you were posting everything, and this is actually a really good reminder for all of our listeners too, take Hollery's example, especially as you're starting out a new photography business. I understand that, there may be a certain stage at which we're trying to get any work that we possibly can. But at the end of the day, if we want to build a successful brand, one of the easiest ways to do that is to really niche down and to get specific. And if we're posting, whether it's on our website or social media, we're just kind of posting in everything that we photograph, it's confusing for people to land on, if people went to Apple's website and they open up and it's a bookstore suddenly, they'd be confused. Like, wait, what's this about? We can't also be 5 different types of photographers in addition to a maternity photographer or an underwater photographer, whatever it might be. So that specificity really helps hone in on the potential market that we want to actually connect with. And we need to learn to be comfortable with that. That will also help with distinguishing between what we're expecting from family and our actual client. So I think that's a really great reminder.
Yes. Now, sometimes I do post other things to remind people, like, hey, I love to do this too. So they can see it. Okay. But I mostly post maternity now. And people will notice that's the majority of what they see in your feed or on your website. I think they will notice that. And that really goes a long way. This, and we'll close on this. This is again a much bigger topic, but this actually reminds me of a conversation around the psychological principle of codependency.
and how unhealthy that can be. I mean, this exhibits itself in our relationships with friends, families, partners, or otherwise. It's easy to rely on our happiness for this, or our happiness. We rely on other people to provide that happiness. And what you were speaking to earlier, I think, is a really important concept, not just for a photography business, but for life as well, which is to be comfortable with ourselves and sure of ourselves and what it is that we're actually striving to do. And that can be just by itself, without relying on whether it's family or any other group of people. Learning to be comfortable and happy with ourselves is super important. I think a really good way to close out the conversation. Anything you want to add to that?
I think the one thing I would just say is what all photographers say a lot of time is just don't compare yourself. Just work on yourself, stay in your craft, and get better at that. And that's it. Don't worry about anyone else. Just do your thing.
Great way to sum up the conversation. I really appreciate it, Hollery. Remind our listeners one more time where they can find you and follow you online.
Yes, so my Facebook page is Hollery Morris Photography, which is HOLLERY MORRIS Photography. My Instagram is Hollery Morris Photos, and my website is hollerymorris.com. And it has, on each platform you go to, it has all the other platforms. So
beautiful. And we'll put all this in the show notes at newbiepodcast.com. Thank you so much, Hollery. Thanks everybody for chiming in. Have a wonderful day.